She screamed when she saw the sheets folded. Not because they were dirty, not because I forgot to wash them, but because I folded my side. The one she hadn't let me sleep on in 6 weeks. I didn't say anything when she started sleeping in mismatched pajamas instead of the silk ones I bought her. I didn't complain when she angled every fan in the room toward me like I was some walking furnace. I didn't even flinch when she started placing a decorative pillow between us every night like a hotel armrest. But I guess folding the sheets was going too far. I had slept at Harmon's. One night. One normal, silent night. No pillow wall. No excuses about tension headaches. No soft push of her back as a way of saying, not tonight. Just sleep. Honest, uninterrupted sleep in a strange bed, where I didn't feel like a rejected accessory tossed to the floor. And suddenly, she noticed. She noticed the folded corner, the absence of my charger, the coffee mug missing from my nightstand. The curtain I usually adjusted was still crooked. My shoes weren't under the bench. My scent, barely there. And now, she was pacing. She asked where I went. I said, somewhere I didn't feel like a ghost. She flinched. I didn't mean it to hurt, but it did. You could see it, even if she tried to turn it into a smirk. That's her move. Spin discomfort into sarcasm. I didn't think you'd actually leave over a sleeping arrangement. She said it like I'd stomped out over spilled milk. Like sharing a bed was optional in marriage. Like intimacy had nothing to do with proximity. I wanted to ask her what changed. Why her body flinched when I brushed against her leg. Why she stared at her phone like it had better stories than I did. Why she started saying, I'm tired, even before dinner. But I didn't. I just watched her stand there, in that faded college hoodie she only wears when she's not wearing anything underneath. But this time, she was. Fully covered. Like armor. Lowell, she said, voice wobbling. I need you here. That word, need, it came out like it was foreign to her. Like she hadn't said it out loud in years and forgot how it tasted. I wanted to ask her why she needed me now. Why not all those nights I lay staring at the ceiling, wondering if her silence was punishment or indifference. But I stayed quiet. Because I knew something was off. She wasn't just afraid of the empty bed. She was afraid of what I might have discovered, or who. And I hadn't even told her I found the receipt. Yeah, that receipt. But we'll get to that. She noticed at the moment I pulled it from my back pocket. Her expression dropped like I'd handed her a loaded weapon. Not angry. Not shocked. Just cold. Like she'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times and didn't expect it to happen so soon. I didn't say anything right away. I just laid it gently on the kitchen island like it might bite me. She stood still, staring at it like it was on fire. It wasn't even dramatic looking. Just a crumpled square of thermal paper, ink already fading from being jammed into my jeans. But the words were still readable. A hotel name neither of us had ever visited, 2 nights charged, room service for 2, and 1 cocktail bar tab with a handwritten tip signed T. That was the part that got me, the tip line. She never uses just an initial. Never. She always signs her full name in looping letters that fill the whole strip. So why T now? I found the receipt when I went looking for allergy pills in her car's center console. Not snooping. Just desperate after sneezing for half an hour at Harmon's dusty cabin. But there it was, folded under a napkin with lipstick I didn't recognize. She doesn't even wear lipstick unless it's for weddings or interviews. We haven't had either in months. I didn't accuse her. I didn't yell. I just handed it to her, trembling like I was the one caught doing something wrong. She didn't reach for it. Didn't blink. Just said, you shouldn't go through my things, Lowell. That was it. Not, it's not what it looks like. Not, let me explain. Just a warning. Cold and clipped, like I'd stepped over a boundary she had every right to enforce, even after pushing me out of our bed. I don't remember sitting down, but somehow I was in the kitchen chair, staring at the tile grout while she finally picked up the paper. She smoothed it out like it mattered to keep it neat now, glanced at it, and sighed. It was a client, she said. Late meeting. Drinks after. I stayed overnight so I wouldn't drive tired. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her so badly that I almost nodded just to make it stop. But that signature, T, that was what ruined it. That wasn't the signature of someone working. That was a signature left for someone waiting. Like a note on a pillow. A trail for a man who already knew where the receipt came from. So I asked the only thing I could manage without falling apart. Why didn't you tell me you stayed in a hotel at all? She didn't answer. Just stared at me with those wide, tired eyes. Because I knew you'd react like this. Like what? Like everything's a betrayal. Those words stung in a way I didn't expect. Because maybe she was right. Maybe I'd become so sensitive, so paranoid, that I couldn't tell the difference between space and rejection anymore. But if that was true, why did she look so guilty? I left the house again that night. Not in anger, not in protest, just to breathe. I sat in the car, parked 2 blocks down the street, engine off, in the dark, and listened to a podcast I didn't care about. My phone buzzed once. Tessa, are you going to keep running away every time you feel left out? I didn't answer, because I wasn't running. I was waiting for her to admit it, or deny it, or something. Anything. But silence filled the cracks like smoke. And the longer I sat there, the more I started to wonder, what if it wasn't just one night at that hotel? What if this had been going on for much longer than I'd ever suspected? And worse, what if I'd been the distraction this whole time, not the priority? Something deep in my gut told me, this wasn't over. Not even close. The 3rd night I stayed at Harmon's, I started lying to myself. I told him I just needed time to clear my head, to think, maybe even write, like I was some novelist finding clarity in his absence. The truth? I didn't want to walk into that house again. I didn't want to smell her perfume on the pillow and wonder if it had been worn for someone else. I didn't want to open our fridge and notice 2 wine glasses in the sink when I hadn't touched wine in a month. And I definitely didn't want to hear her voice, that new tone she used, calm, dismissive, and somehow always just a little disappointed in me. Like I was the overdramatic one, the emotionally needy husband who couldn't take a woman needing a bit of distance. But then I made a mistake. I forgot my laptop charger. I came back during the day, assuming she was at work. The house was quiet, unnaturally so. Our mail was piled up inside the door, the cat was asleep on the stairs, and her car was still in the driveway. I hesitated, thinking maybe she had taken the day off. That's when I heard it, a thump from the guest room. It wasn't loud, just a small, dull sound, like something dropped or shifted. I froze, standing in the hallway, my hand halfway to the doorknob. The guest room had become her sanctuary. She said the light was better there, that it helped her sleep, that it felt more separated. I hated that word. Separated. Still, I knocked. No response. I knocked again. Still nothing. Then I opened the door. At first glance, the room was spotless, the kind of spotless that didn't look lived in. The bed was perfectly made, pillows fluffed, curtains drawn slightly open. But the air was different. Heavier. There was a faint scent of cologne, not mine. Not hers either. Something woodsy, musky. Not familiar. I stepped in and looked closer. The trash bin had 2 used tissues, both with lipstick stains on them. That stopped me. She hadn't worn lipstick around me in forever. Then, I noticed the nightstand drawer was slightly ajar. I don't know what made me open it. Maybe I already knew something wasn't right. Maybe I wanted to prove myself wrong. Inside was a hotel key card. Same logo as the receipt. My heart sank. I held it in my hand, stared at it like it might dissolve. No note. No date. Just the key. Like a quiet admission buried beneath throw pillows and denial. I didn't take it with me. I placed it right back where I found it, careful to leave it exactly how it was. I closed the drawer and stepped out of the room like I hadn't been there. Grabbed my charger. Left the house. Didn't say a word. That night, she texted me again. This time it was different. I don't know what you're looking for, but you're not going to find it. That sentence made my skin crawl. Not because of the words themselves, but because she knew. She must have known I had been there. She must have noticed. And rather than asking me to come home or saying she missed me, she warned me, as if I was the problem for being curious. I wanted to confront her, to demand answers. But part of me was afraid of the truth. What if the answers unraveled everything? What if I already knew the truth deep down, but wasn't ready to carry the weight of saying it aloud? So instead, I sat at the edge of Harmon's guest bed, holding my charger like it was proof of some battle I didn't know how to fight, and asked myself something that made my chest feel hollow. If she really loved me, would I be living like a stranger in someone else's house while a mystery man's scent lingered in mine? I didn't sleep at all that night. And the next morning, I did something I never thought I'd do. I called someone who knew her before me. Someone I hadn't spoken to in over a decade. Because if I was going to learn what changed in her, I needed to know who she used to be when I wasn't around to get in the way. I stared at my phone for nearly an hour before I finally dialed her name. Mara Denson. I hadn't spoken to her since Tessa and I got married. She was Tessa's best friend in college, maybe even more than that at one point, if the rumors were true, But she stopped coming around when Tessa and I got serious. They had a falling out. I never asked why. Tessa said Mara was dramatic and stuck in the past. But that morning, with everything I was drowning in, stuck in the past, was exactly what I needed. When Mara answered, I could tell she wasn't expecting my name to flash across her screen. Her voice was hesitant, guarded, almost like she thought someone was playing a joke. I explained everything in the calmest, weakest voice I could manage, that I thought something was wrong with my marriage, that Tessa had become someone I couldn't understand anymore, and that maybe the woman I thought I knew had never really existed. There was a long silence. Then Mara said something that made the air feel heavier. I'm surprised it took you this long to ask. That one sentence unraveled me. She wasn't shocked. She wasn't confused. She sounded resigned. Mara, I said, barely holding it together, I need to know what she's hiding from me. I don't want to accuse her of something she didn't do. I need to know who she used to be. Before me. And Mara, after a pause, replied with, she's always had a second life, Lowell. You just weren't supposed to be part of it. She then told me about someone named Reed Baylor. Apparently, back in college, Tessa had been inseparable from him. Not officially a couple, not publicly at least, but always in orbit around each other. Reed was the kind of guy who didn't leave footprints, no social media, no tags, no photos. Just stories. Late nights, hidden hotel rooms, meetups that no one else was allowed to know about. Mara said she only found out because she once walked in on Tessa sobbing in the dorm stairwell at 3 a.m., clutching a scarf that didn't belong to her. She said Reed had a hold on Tessa, a kind of gravity that pulled her in and spit her out. Every time she tried to escape it, she'd come back more guarded, more secretive. When she met me, Mara said, Tessa finally started acting like she wanted stability. Like maybe she was done chasing the mystery. But even then, Mara never fully believed she let go. Lowell, she said, gently, if Reed's back, you won't find out through her. You'll only find out when she's done hiding. I thanked her, awkwardly, like someone apologizing for eavesdropping on their own life. I hung up and sat there, phone in my lap, heart unraveling in slow waves. That name, Reed Baylor, felt like a shadow stretching across everything I thought was real. I had never heard her mention him, not once in all our years together. Not even a passing reference. And now I couldn't stop seeing his fingerprints on everything. The change in her eyes. The tension in her smile. The perfume I didn't recognize. The locked drawer. I returned to the house again later that day. I didn't knock this time. I didn't even text. I walked inside like it was still mine, though it hadn't felt that way in weeks. Tessa was in the kitchen, holding a glass of wine even though it was barely noon. She didn't speak when she saw me. Just stared. I think she knew I was past the point of pleading. I sat across from her and slid my phone toward her. Open. The call log still showing Mara's name. You remember her? I asked. The friend you told me was too chaotic for your new life? Her face didn't twitch. Not even a blink. Then she said it. Is that what this is about? You want to go digging through ghosts now? That's when I knew. There was something real behind it. Something living and present that she had tried to bury. Not a ghost. A man. And for the first time in our marriage, I felt like I wasn't even sitting across from a person anymore. I was sitting across from a carefully built illusion, one that was slowly cracking at the seams. But I didn't explode. I didn't scream. I just asked, quietly, was it him? Her grip on the glass tightened. Don't do this, Lowell. I repeated, even softer, was it Reed? She didn't answer. She just walked out of the room. And somehow, that silence, that absence of an answer, said more than anything she ever could have admitted out loud. I stayed in the kitchen long after she disappeared down the hall. I stared at the wineglass she left behind and wondered if anything in our life had ever really belonged to me, or if I'd just been occupying space someone else left behind. But I wasn't leaving this time. If she wanted to pretend nothing happened, I'd play along. Because now I was watching. And if there was still a second life buried somewhere in this house, I was going to dig it up. She left her bag on the dining table. That's where it always landed when she was trying to act casual, like she hadn't just come from somewhere she wasn't supposed to be. I didn't say anything, just watched her take off her coat like the house wasn't on fire. She moved through the kitchen quietly, opened the fridge, poured herself a sparkling water, and hummed some tune that didn't sound like anything she'd ever listened to before. I was sitting on the couch, pretending to scroll through emails, but I wasn't really looking at anything. My eyes were locked on the bag. Something about the way it slouched didn't feel right. She never left it unzipped. Never. Even back when we used to share everything. She kept that bag buttoned up like it held classified information. And now, after everything we hadn't said in the last few days, she was just leaving it there? I waited for her to go upstairs. As soon as I heard the water running in the shower, I stood up and walked to the table like I was in a trance. I didn't feel like a man anymore. I felt like a sad detective in his own home, trying to understand why the person he loved suddenly spoke in riddles and moved through shadows. I opened the bag slowly, gently, like I expected it to scream. Inside were the usual things: her wallet, a lipstick she never wore for me, a single house key, and then, underneath the side pouch, a second phone. A phone I had never seen before. It wasn't a burner phone. It looked real. Expensive. Like something personal, not disposable. The screen lit up as I touched it. Locked, of course, but not dead. That meant it was charged. That meant it was being used. My hands were shaking. I stood there, holding it like it might detonate, waiting for it to buzz or ring or even just breathe. But it didn't. Just a blank lock screen, wallpaper set to a stock forest image, no name, no sign of who it belonged to. And I knew, with a clarity I couldn't deny, this wasn't her work phone. This wasn't even a backup. This was something else. Something I wasn't meant to find. I placed it back exactly as I found it. Zipped the bag. Sat down. She came downstairs a few minutes later, hair damp, robe tied loose like nothing in the world was out of place. "You want to watch something tonight?" she asked. "I don't mind if you pick." That almost made me laugh. Now I get to pick? I told her I wasn't feeling well, that I might turn in early. She nodded, didn't press, just walked past me and started browsing the TV apps like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't brought a second life into our house in a leather tote bag. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, her slow breathing rising and falling from the guest room down the hall. I couldn't bring myself to ask her. Not yet. Because if I asked, and she lied, and I knew she was lying, I didn't think I could hold the pieces of myself together afterward. So I did something else. I waited until she was gone the next morning. Her car pulled out of the driveway at 8:16 a.m. I gave it 10 minutes. Then I opened her bag again. The phone was gone, replaced by a folded brochure for a home renovation expo. Something she'd never mentioned, something we had no plans to attend, something so completely out of place it might as well have been a decoy. She knew I saw it. She had to. And that meant we were past the point of pretending. So I did the only thing I could think to do. I drove downtown, parked across from her office, and waited. Not to confront her. Not to follow her. I waited to see who she'd meet. And at 12:43 p.m., a tall man with salt and pepper hair stepped out of a silver Lexus. He didn't go into the building. He waited. Calm, hands in pockets, eyes scanning. 2 minutes later, she came out. They didn't hug. They didn't kiss. They just smiled. Like they'd done this 100 times before. Then they got in his car and drove away. And I sat in mine, too stunned to even turn the engine on, wondering if I'd just seen the ghost Mara warned me about. Not a memory, but a man made real. A man with a Lexus. A man with my wife. I told myself I wouldn't follow them. That I'd just watch her leave with the mystery man and then go home, sit in silence, and figure out what to do next. But I couldn't. My hands were trembling on the steering wheel, my stomach turning itself inside out, and I kept imagining 1,000 scenarios that were probably worse than reality. Except, at this point, I wasn't sure what reality even was anymore. So I followed. I stayed 2 cars behind. Not close enough to be obvious, but not far enough to lose them. My heart was pounding like I was running from a crime I hadn't committed. They drove north, past the main business district, through the older side of town where the buildings are sun-bleached and the streets don't have proper lines. He parked in front of a cafe I didn't recognize. A quiet place. No sign. No crowd. The kind of location you'd choose when you don't want to be seen. I waited 5 minutes before getting out of the car. My legs felt numb. My thoughts were scrambled. Part of me wanted to scream into traffic. The other part just wanted to see her eyes, to see if they still held anything real in them. I walked toward the cafe, acting like I was just passing by. The windows were slightly fogged from the heat inside, but not enough to hide what I saw. They were sitting at a corner booth. She was laughing. He was leaning in close, smiling like he knew her in a way I didn't. Her hands weren't touching his, but they weren't far either. The space between them looked lived in. Familiar. Intimate without being obvious. I stood there like an idiot, pretending to tie my shoe, staring through the glass as if I could make this all make sense just by watching. But I couldn't. I felt pathetic. I felt invisible. I felt like someone who had missed every warning sign because he was too busy trying to believe that everything was still okay. When I got back to the car, I finally cried. Not like a movie cry. No fists. No shouting. Just slow, messy sobbing into my sleeves while people passed by, not noticing the man collapsing inside a parked car. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the confirmation that I had become nothing more than a background character in my own marriage. A placeholder for whatever she was chasing now. That night, I didn't return to Harmon's. I didn't go home either. I drove aimlessly until my gas light came on, then checked into a cheap motel near the highway, the kind with sticky carpet and bad lighting, where even the silence feels judgmental. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at my reflection in the darkened TV screen. I looked like a man who had aged 10 years in a week. I didn't sleep. I just waited for the sun to come back and hoped it would bring some kind of clarity. It didn't. When I finally returned home the next morning, something was different. Her car was in the driveway, but the front door was unlocked. That never happened. She was meticulous. Always locked the door, even when she just went to the mailbox. I stepped inside slowly. The living room was quiet. Too quiet. I called her name. No answer. Then I saw it, on the kitchen counter, in the same place where I'd left her that receipt days ago, a small white envelope. My name written on the front in her handwriting. Inside was a note, no more than 6 words. I didn't want to hurt you. That was it. No apology. No explanation. No emotion. I stood there frozen, staring at the note like it was written in a foreign language. My hand started shaking again. Then I heard a noise from upstairs, the creak of a floorboard. She was home. I climbed the stairs one slow step at a time, heart in my throat, until I reached the guest room door. It was half open. She was inside. But she wasn't alone. And the person she was with was not the man from the cafe. No, this was someone else entirely. Someone I knew. And in that moment, everything I thought I understood about the affair, about the second phone, about Reed Baylor, it all shattered. Because the truth was so much worse than what I'd imagined. I should have left the moment I saw the silhouette. I should have backed down the stairs and walked out of the house like it was on fire. But I didn't. I kept walking, kept letting my curiosity push me towards something I didn't have the strength to face. My breath was shallow, heartbeat thudding against my ribs like it was trying to stop me. When I pushed the door open, I froze. She was sitting on the bed, cross-legged, calm. Her hair was damp, no makeup, wearing an oversized hoodie that didn't belong to me. But it wasn't her that stopped me in my tracks. It was the person sitting in the chair across from her. My brother, Nolan. I hadn't seen him in 6 months. He lived 2 states away, always chasing contracts, working late shifts, and rarely returning calls. We weren't exactly close, but we shared blood and birthdays and the same damn scar from falling off the deck at Grandma's cabin when we were kids. We drifted over the years, but I never hated him. Not until that moment. He looked up at me like he'd been expecting this. No panic. No guilt. Just a tired, almost sympathetic look. I didn't speak. Couldn't. Tessa stood. She didn't reach for me. She didn't cry. She just said, "You weren't supposed to see this yet." Yet. That word shattered something inside me. My vision went blurry. The room felt like it tilted. I backed into the doorframe just to keep from falling. I couldn't look at either of them, but I couldn't stop looking either. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion and realizing you were the one behind the wheel the whole time. How long? I finally choked out. My voice didn't even sound like mine. Nolan stood up too. He was taller than me, always had been, but now he seemed like a giant. A wall I couldn't get past. He didn't answer. So I asked again. How long, Tessa? She folded her arms, looked at the floor, then back at me. Since February. I couldn't breathe. February. That was the month she said her insomnia had gotten worse. The month she started sleeping in the guest room. The month we stopped touching each other altogether. All this time, I thought it was stress, or burnout, or distance creeping in like fog. But it wasn't. It was him. My own brother. She continued. It didn't start intentionally. He came to visit, and we talked, and, one night, it just happened. And after that, we... Stop, I snapped. Don't tell me it just happened. That's the worst part. You're trying to explain it like it's normal. Like you just spilled coffee on a carpet. Nolan stepped forward like he wanted to speak. I flinched. He backed off. I looked at both of them and realized something terrifying. Neither of them looked sorry. Not really. Not in the way people do when they ruin someone's life. They looked like people caught doing something they planned to eventually reveal, just on their own schedule. That's when it hit me. That second phone? That wasn't for Reed. That wasn't for some mysterious stranger from the past. It was for Nolan. The texts, the secrecy, the hotel stays, the slow, calculated emotional distance. She hadn't been confused or torn. She'd been preparing. I asked one more question, because I had to know. Was the guy in the cafe? Was that just a cover? She nodded slowly. His name is Peter. He's a friend. We needed you to see someone else, just in case. In case. In case I caught them. So not only had they betrayed me, they built a backup plan for the moment I finally noticed. They created a fake affair to cover up the real one. Like I was some child they could distract with shiny keys while they burned the house down. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't punch a wall. I just walked away. Quietly. Carefully. Step by step. I went back to the motel. Packed my bag. Left the key on the desk and drove. I didn't know where I was going. I just drove. Mile after mile, until my thoughts started to break apart into fragments, and the road looked like static. And the entire time, one thought echoed through my head. I could have forgiven almost anything, but not this. Not them. Not my wife. And not my own brother. I didn't go back for my things. I left everything, my clothes, my books, the framed photos of vacations that clearly meant more to me than to her. Let her keep it all. The house. The furniture. Even the mattress with that sinking crack between us. It could all rot in the memory of what we used to be. I drove west for 2 days. No map. No destination. I stayed off the interstates, stuck to back roads and forgotten towns. I wanted to be nowhere. I wanted silence, real silence, not the cold kind you feel when someone lies next to you and still feels miles away, but the kind that doesn't expect anything from you. I ended up in a town called Auburn Ridge. I'd never heard of it before. Population barely scratched 6,000. But it had something I hadn't felt in months. Clean air, quiet mornings, people who looked you in the eye without pretending. I rented a tiny cottage with a slanted porch and a chipped mailbox. The bed creaked. The water took forever to warm. But that first night, I slept for 13 straight hours. The next morning, I sat outside with a mug of gas station coffee and listened to birds I couldn't name. No buzzing phones. No questions. No guilt. And I didn't miss her. Not anymore. I started doing odd jobs around town, patching fences, delivering groceries to folks too old to drive, helping a retired mechanic organize his garage. They didn't know my story. They didn't ask. To them, I was just Lowell, the guy who knows how to fix things. And, oddly enough, I did. I fixed a leaky roof. I fixed a broken radio. I fixed the silence inside me. I even found someone. Not love, not yet. But something better. A connection that didn't feel like walking on eggshells. Her name was Elise. She ran the bookstore 2 blocks from the post office. She didn't ask what I'd been through. She just smiled every time I walked in. Offered me tea instead of coffee. Listened more than she spoke. For now, that's all I needed. And maybe, in time, it could be more. I don't hate Tessa anymore. I don't hate Nolan either. Strange, isn't it? Hate takes energy. And I've wasted too much of mine trying to be enough for people who were already halfway out the door. I still have that note she left on the kitchen counter. I didn't want to hurt you. It sits folded in the back of my wallet. Not as a wound, but as a reminder. A reminder that some people will lie to your face and then blame you for looking hurt. A reminder that you can lose everything and still wake up stronger than the person who betrayed you. A reminder that walking away isn't weakness, it's survival. So if you're reading this because your bed's gone cold, or because you're hearing whispers from behind a locked door, don't wait for answers you already know. Leave with your dignity. Heal with your silence. And one day, not tomorrow, not next week, but eventually, you'll sleep through the night again. Just like I did.